In this video, you're going to learn a new way to vibe code, and I don't think you're ever going to go back. The app that we're going to be building is a tool that uses AI to track your brand mentions in ChatGPT. Companies like this are blowing up and raising millions of dollars, and you're going to learn how to use Xano, Cursor, and Lovable to build it on your own. One of the biggest challenges that I come across when I'm building in tools like Cursor and Lovable is that you have the backend and logic built with code, but you don't fully understand how it works or what's happening. What's really cool about Xano is that you can see all of the logic and API calls in your app visually, which makes it really easy to understand what's happening, especially as your app gets complicated and large. Thank you to Xano for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description to go to Xano and build alongside me. Here we are inside of Xano. So we're going to go ahead and select our server instance. And then inside of our server instance, we have individual workspaces for the apps that we're going to build. So I'm going to create a new workspace here, and we're going to say we're building an app and click continue. For setting up the workspace, let's go ahead and start from scratch. Now, it's cool that there is a create with AI feature, but for this tutorial, I like to start with the scratch feature because it's going to show you more about how Xano is set up, and then you can always go back and create with AI in the future. We are going to include the quick start template, which is just going to give us some initial things which are going to be helpful, which you're going to see in a few minutes. So we're just going to give our workspace a name, Xano AI app. I'm going to say we are doing AI assisted development, and we are going to use Cursor. And we're going to go ahead and create the workspace. Second, we're going to get to the fun part of actually building our AI app. But first, I have a few things to show you. So here on the left side, we have our database tab. In the database, you can see all the tables, and these are the quick start tables that were created, the user table, account table, event log, the agent conversations if we want to build agents into our app. So Xano just builds all of this, and then as you'll see later, we're going to use these tables that were created. We have an API tab. This is where we're going to build APIs into our app. And again, you're going to see how we're going to do this from scratch. These are some basic APIs that were generated automatically with the quick start template, such as authentication. And you can see these are the API calls that were created. So this basically gives our app the functionality of doing the API calls. Now, in the future, we're going to use AI to generate more API calls, so you're not going to have to do any of it from scratch. There's a really cool AI tab here where you can build your own tools, build your own agents, and even build your own MCP servers inside of Xano. And this is something that we're going to get to later on. You can automate with background tasks and then some more advanced features as well. Now, one more thing I want to show you before we jump into the building. Within the API tab, let's say we click on authentication and we want to click on one of these functions. So let's say we want to do the login function. So here you can see this in a few different ways. And this is for every piece of logic in your app. And this is something that makes Xano really powerful. So we have our canvas view. So we're going to be able to see everything that happens in a really no-code way. And I think this is what really makes Xano powerful. When you're building with tools like Cursor or Lovable or any AI app builder, all of this logic is in the dark. You don't really know what's happening. And especially as your app gets more complex, this can become really challenging. With Xano, everything is fully visible to you, and you can see it even here in a non-technical way in the canvas step by step to see what's happening. Then we have the stack view of the function, where you can even test it with inputs, seeing what happens as we run it and getting a response. So we can test everything again in a no-code way. And there's also a code view if you actually want to go into the code and dig into that as well. All right, so now that you have a bit of an understanding of how Xano is set up, and again, this is the back end of our app that we're going to be building. So Xano is going to handle the user authentication, the database, the logic, everything in the back end. And then we have some options for the front end, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later in the video. So let's start with getting Cursor set up with the Xano plugin. So that way we can easily connect to Cursor and start building our backend in Cursor. You're going to be really impressed and maybe a little bit surprised with how easy it is to get started. So you're going to go into Cursor. If you don't have Cursor, just go ahead and download it. It's really easy actually to get started with. It's nothing to be intimidated by. But here we are inside of Cursor, and we're going to go ahead and just open a project and create a new folder. So I just created this new folder in my computer. I'm going to open it. And now we are working in a brand new folder. So this is something that you need to do when you're getting started. Just start in an empty folder here. And then I'm going to show you how to connect the Xano plugin into Cursor. So if you don't have it already, all you need to do is click on this little button on the top left, go to extensions, and you want to search for Xano. So when you search for Xano script is going to come up. You want to click on that and install it. And then once you install it, you should be able to go down and just make sure that it is pinned. So you click that button, and then now we have our Xano script plugin pinned here inside of Cursor. And this is what's going to allow us to easily connect to our Xano backend and our project and workspace that we just created. So just go ahead and click Get Started. You're just going to want to click Log in Xano. Once you log in, you can go ahead and select your instance and then go ahead and select your project. So our project that we created was Xano AI app. And then we're going to select the branch, V1 live branch. I can click Pull Changes to just pull everything into our app from Xano. And then, yes, we want to click Setup AI Agent Instructions because this is going to give Cursor all the instructions it needs to talk to Xano. And now if we go to our files here on the left side, you can see all of these files are now inside of the folder that we just created. You can see we have APIs. These are the 3 APIs that I was just going over in the Xano dashboard, the authentication API, event, and members. And this was, again, created with the quick start template. And then this is also something really cool to see is the docs. And there's all this documentation that we're giving Cursor by default from Xano, which is telling Cursor how to interact with Xano. And here we can see we also have our database tables, for example. So all of this is here. And we also have our agents.md and our claude.md, which helps make sure we're going to get a good result. So now we're going to actually start building our backend. So I want to build an app that allows us to track our brand mentions on ChatGPT. So to do this, we're just going to write a simple prompt asking to do this. I'm going to say, let's start only with ChatGPT with the OpenAI API using the web search function, web search API call to get brand mentions for different search queries. And I want to focus first on building the MVP of this app. And something very important is we want to make sure on Cursor we're using plan mode to start. I'm going to go ahead and use Sonnet 4.5. You could try a different model, but this is generally the best model right now that I found. So we're going to go ahead and send that off. And now Cursor is going to plan out the backend. And so it's not going to actually write any code or make changes yet. But in a second, you're going to see how we go through the process of actually pushing these changes to Xano. Ask some additional questions, like what is the tracking approach? What data should we track from ChatGPT? So I said I want the demand tracking, on-demand tracking, not scheduled. I want detailed tracking. And then I said I only want a back-end logic with Xano right now. I don't actually want to do the front end. We're going to do that later. So now it's going to hopefully build out more. And as you can see here, it read through all of these files that Xano created in the documentation of how to create the tables, how to do everything in the APIs. And this is how we're going to get a plan that actually works with Xano. So here we can see it's going to create these tables, search queries, results, brand mentions, the functions of calling OpenAI, parsing the results, analyzing sentiment, and then the API endpoints that needs to be created. Let's go ahead and click build, and it's going to go through this plan and build this out inside of Xano. All right, so here we can see it finished. It added these features that we asked for, included on-demand tracking, analytics, user authentication, pagination, historical tracking data, sentiment analysis, and full error handling. So in terms of next steps, it's telling me to push the changes to Xano. Then we want to test the system. And it also gives us some ideas for future enhancements, which are included, which is really nice to see, including scheduled tracking, other AI platforms, email notifications, export, things like that. Really cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to our Xano script. And then if we go down to changed, we can see all the files that were changed. What I'm going to do is go ahead and click stage all files. And then up here, I'm going to click push stage changes to Xano. And you can see it's pushing the changes to Xano right now. All right, so we pushed that to Xano. And now let's jump back into our Xano dashboard. So I just refreshed the page, and here we are in the databases table, and we can see all of these new tables that were created for us. The brand mentions, the search queries, the search results. This was all created. Right now it's empty because we haven't actually added to it, but the database is being set up for us. Then under API, we have tracking, which is our API group. So if I click in, we can see all the APIs inside of this tracking group. We can see we have dimensions, run search queries, get queries. So all of this is here. And if we click into it, you can see the actual canvas of what's happening when we are doing a search query through OpenAI and how it's creating the variable and saving it. And then one more thing I want to do, because I saw that the OpenAI key in the MVP version was just basically not set as an environment variable, which isn't ideal. So what we're going to do is now set this in Xano as an environment variable. And then we have to ask in Cursor to basically update our code to reference the environment variable. Just say, yes, I will add the env variable OpenAI underscore API key. And in Xano, please plan how to update the code to reference this for API calls. And then we can go ahead and build this new plan. While that's happening, why don't we go back and actually add this to Xano? So in Xano, just go to your settings, go to manage. We're going to click add variable. I'm going to paste in the name and then get my OpenAI API key. And I just saved that. So now, hopefully, after we make these changes in Cursor, we're going to go here. We can see there are some changes here that we can go ahead and push it to Xano. Go back to Xano. We should be able to test this out. So first I went into the user table here and I created a test user under my email with the username and password. And then we're going to go back. And the reason I did that was so that we had a user to test our function with. So now we can go into our API, we can go into tracking, and there's a couple steps here. First, we have to go to search queries and create a new search query. So I can run this. We can add query text. So why don't we say, just as an example, like best software for data analytics. And then for brand name, we can just say, this would be pulled in with the front end, but we can just say analytics. Why don't we say Tableau as the brand name? Okay. So we're going to run that. Or actually, I need an auth token. Make sure you select that user that we created. We're going to click run. And now we have an ID. The ID of this query is 1 because it's the first one we created. But now we should be able to go back. And also just to show you, if we go into our database and we go into our search queries, we can see that was now saved as a search query. And then we could rerun this to get the results over and over again. And that's where it really did a good job of structuring this. So let's go back into our API, into tracking, and why don't we run a search? And this is where we're going to see if the OpenAI update worked. So we're going to run this. The search query ID is 1, the same auth token of myself, and let's run it. Okay, so I did get an error. So I just reset Instinct Workspace and then had it do it again just to make sure that it's working. It says now it should work and I should be able to push. So why don't I go ahead and stage the current file, push that to Xano, and there were no errors. So hopefully now it's going to work. Let's just go back to our API. Let's check it, run search. If I click run, okay, now it doesn't have that OpenAI requirement anymore. So hopefully it works. Now it actually did update. So let's test this again. Okay, so now we're getting a different error, which I think is a good thing. Let me copy it and say, and put it back in Cursor. You can also copy and paste the error directly into the logic assistant on the top left, which is a great feature that Xano has and should allow you to debug and fix these types of issues even more quickly than putting it into Cursor. So after some debugging, I was able to get it to work. Something that you need to keep in mind when working with APIs, especially APIs that are changing a lot, is it's really helpful to paste in the specific URL of the API inside of Cursor so that it can actually search and read the pages of the API. That was something I was running into, but I was able to resolve it with that. And now we can check here in Xano, and you can see we can do a quick test. We can run a search and run. We'll test with 2 and run it. And now we should be able to actually get a result. You see the little ticker there, and cool. We got the result. And it looks 2 total mentions for Tableau, and it's giving us the 2 mentions, which is awesome. So then if we go back to our database under brand mentions, now we can see they are being populated, which is really cool. Okay, so we've now built out our initial backend. We have the API calls, which are successfully connecting to OpenAI. We have our user table and our database. So the next thing we're going to do is build our front end. Now you could build your front end with any tool. For this video, we're going to use Lovable just because it's easy to get started with. But just know you could use this with any AI app building tool as the front end, and then Xano would be the back end. You can also use it with tools even like Bubble or Reweb for the back end and logic. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up Lovable. So here we are inside of Lovable. And what I'm going to do is say, let's build a front end for an AI app that tracks brand mentions on ChatGPT. We will use the backend through Xano. And then there's something really important that you need to do. So if we go back to Xano, we need to go to API. And what we need to do is make sure that Lovable has the API endpoints to actually connect back to Xano. So to do this, we're going to click into the API. And then there's something called Swagger documentation. So we're going to click on that. And then we need to get the actual URL. Basically, this is the JSON that we need Lovable to have to actually connect. So I'm just going to go here and copy link address. So just to show you, if you go to, that's going to be that information. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. And then I'm also going to go and make sure we add the authentication. So we're going to do the same thing, Swagger documentation, copy that link address. And I'll say, here is the authentication API as well. So we'll send that off and we'll see how well Lovable does at actually creating the front end for this. And then we're going to test it out and see if everything's connecting to the back end. Okay, so it says it created the front end. Let's sign in and actually test it out. So the first test is authentication. Let's create the account. And we did get an error. It failed to create the account. So the issue was the password just needs to have 6 characters and 1 number. So let's create the account. Okay, it seems like I was able to create the account. Let's check Xano. We go to our database. And if we go to users, yep, it successfully created the account. We have our new user with our name and Seth plus test at nocode.nba. So this is, we've already created now a front end in Lovable that is talking to our backend in Xano. So now let's take this to the next level. So let's create a query. So let's say the brand name is HubSpot and the search query is what CRM tools are best. And let's create that query. So it says the query was created successfully. Maybe we just have to refresh the page to show it. Let's go to the database and see if it was created. So it did create it in the database. Okay, which is good. But here in the front end, I don't see it. So I'm just going to say I created the search query. I see it was created in the database, but in the front end, I don't see the search query. Okay, cool. So it just had to check the API responses, and now it is working correctly. So we have our search query, which is really cool. So now we just have to click run, and hopefully it works and we actually get our responses. So basically, we're checking for the brand HubSpot for the search query, what CRM tools are best, within the ChatGPT search API. It says it worked, but let's go to the dashboard. Total queries, brands tracking. So I think we might just be running into a similar issue where I ran it. There was no error, but I don't see the result. And this is probably going to be the same thing. We go to the database and we go to brand mentions. We can see, yes, all the HubSpot stuff was there, but it's not being pulled in. So I was having a little bit of trouble getting the results to show. So basically, what Lovable told me is we're not getting the correct API endpoint to pull in that data. So what I did was go to Cursor and basically just create a plan here and had it build out our plan to create a new API endpoint so that we can get those fields that we want to get the data that we want from the database. And just like before, we're going to stage it, and then we'll go ahead and push those stages live to Xano. And then we can see we have a new API endpoint here, search queries with the query ID and results. So what I'll do is just go ahead and get that Swagger documentation again. And just like before, get the URL. And then we'll go back to Lovable and just say, out of that, here's the API endpoints. And then do the same URL before where we're giving it all of the API endpoints to do. So hopefully now it's going to be fully operational. And now if we go into our search results, so on your search queries, we just click the little I, we can go into our search results and we see the history and we can see the mentions and we see 7 mentions. I can view details. So there's one more error when I click view details, it's empty. So I'll just send a message for that. Okay, and now it's working. And if I see the search results, we can see status mention, total mentions, and then we can see the actual results that were pulled in. And we can do this for a new query. So let's do a query. Let's say brand name HubSpot again. And the search query could be best ways to track customer data and get leads. And let's create the query, and then we can go ahead and run it. For this is the second one here. And here we have our result, and then we can see HubSpot was mentioned 8 times. So very cool that it is working. And if I go back, and then I can go to view data here, and now it's still showing up. We can view the details and get back to that page. Cool. So it's all working. We have successfully built an AI app that allows us to track our mentions in ChatGPT, and we could easily add APIs for Perplexity or other tools to get more data. We could also build automatic scheduled reporting. So every day it could run the same report to see how things are going up and down. We could build tracking. There's a lot that we could build on top of this, but the bones of it are all in here. And we've done it with Xano in the backend. And then we're using Lovable here in the front end. And you could use any front end for this with Xano in the back end. I hope that you are inspired to build something. Click the link in the description to start building with Xano today and start building your app ideas, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more content like this for free. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.